Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Ich spreche keine Kölsch. So I'm going to speak in English, but slowly. So Antidote Europe is based in France. It is a consumer protection organization formed of scientists and doctors, and we are always challenging the European Commission on the use of animals to test chemicals, to test pharmaceutical drugs, und so weiter, und so weiter. Okay, so the Chinese have a saying that one picture is like 1,000 words. So if you remember nothing else from my talk tonight, and you just remember this picture, that's my talk. Okay, and what this picture says is if I give a drug or a chemical to these 5 different animals and I get 5 different results, I cannot know how a human being will respond. Now this beautiful photograph comes from the Stern, 1984. So these are the main categories of animal use. Now, diese ist eine Namensschild, ja, Namensschild von Geneva, Schweiz. I am a member of an animal ethics committee in Geneva, and they know who I am. They know that I am a animal rights terrorist, okay? But with this Namensschild, I can walk into any laboratory in Geneva without warning. I can surprise them. So if we can do this in Schweiz, why can't we do this in Deutschland? Yeah? So it's very important that we have people from this community representing the public on animal ethics committees at universities in Germany and research institutions. If it's possible in Switzerland, I'm sure it's possible in Germany. So that is very important because we need some sort of equilibrium, some balance in the animal ethics committees. Most animal ethics committees have a lot of representatives of the animal research community and not enough of the Tierschutz community. So we need to balance that. The European Commission in 2006 published a survey of public opinion where they asked 42,000 members of the European Union if they agree with the use of animals in Grundlagenforschung, basic research, and 68% said no. So that is a clear majority. And Germany is part of the European Union. So Germany is in that 68%. So there is a clear majority of public opinion against using animals in basic research. Basic research is curiosity-driven research. Okay, by definition, you don't have to produce a result. Basic research is what happens when I stimulate this part of the brain of a monkey and I train it to push a lever. Okay, that has nothing to do with human health. But the researcher will not receive any money for his study if he cannot link it to human health. If he cannot make a connection between his animal study and human health, he or she will get no money. So in their application for funding for this sort of animal research, they will say, and this may help people with Alzheimer's, or it may help people with Parkinson's or dementia. Because if they don't write that line, they will receive no money. So they are lying. Because animals cannot predict what will happen in people. And this sort of curiosity-driven research, this Grundlagensforschung, the chances of this research resulting in medical breakthroughs for humans is very close to zero. So the science is on our side here. Most of the animal experimentation happening in Germany today is Grundlagenforschung. About 80%. 80% is basic research, and we are paying for it. We are paying for it. Now, be very aware, be very careful. There is no alternative to basic research. Keine Alternativen für die Grundlagensforschung. Why do I say that? Because I am on an ethics committee, and the animal researcher will say, I cannot do this research in Zellkulturen. He's right, or she's right. You cannot do this experiment in cell culture. But do we need to do this experiment? Should we be doing this experiment and paying for it with our money when 68% of the public say no, and when the science very clearly shows that this sort of research won't produce any benefit for human health? Okay? So that is the real point. There's no alternative to this experiment. There are alternatives to toxicology, yes, but not to basic research. The only alternative to basic research is to stop doing it and to use that money for human clinical research, using human cells, human cell culture, und so weiter, und so weiter. So I don't know how many of you are aware of the Stop Vivisection initiative. In order to qualify to have a session with the European Commission, you have to achieve 1 million signatures within the European Union. And thanks to the very, very hard work of a lot of volunteers in Germany, in Slovakia, Slovenia, France, Belgium, Britain, all over Europe, we got 1.2 million signatures. So we passed the threshold. And we will have a meeting in the European Parliament in Brussels in January or February to ask the European Commission to stop using animals in laboratory experiments as far as human health is concerned. There's no connection. Now, it's going to be a very, very difficult meeting. But what we have already achieved, the success that we have already achieved, is that 1.2 million people know that animal experimentation is not only cruel, it is also bad science. Because most people in the animal welfare community are against animal experimentation because it is cruel, because it causes suffering to animals. But now they know that it's cruel, but it's also bad science. It doesn't work. And the ethical argument and the scientific argument together is very, very strong. If you use only the moral argument, it will take 500 years to stop animal experimentation. If you use only the scientific argument, it will take a long time. But the two together will stop animal experimentation in our lifetime. Okay? Not in 500 years, in our lifetime. So as far as medical education is concerned, there is absolutely no need for animal experimentation or to get healthy animals and kill them. Okay, this is not necessary. In the United States today, almost all medical schools do not use dogs to teach medical students how to save human lives. Okay, it doesn't make sense to use a dog to study human anatomy. And in schools, the same thing is true. There are models, there are plastic models, there are computer models. You can replace dissection with very good alternatives. So there are alternatives to animals in education, in biology, in science, in medical training. And the organization Interniche, which you may have heard of, has been spreading this message and providing this information to countries all over the world, in India, in China, in Europe, South America. And they've saved millions of animals' lives, millions of animals. So today there is, in the area of education, no need for animals. The students who study biology or medicine without using animals get the same marks or better marks than students who practice on dead animals. I mean, biology, it's the study of living things, not dead things. Okay? Biology is the study of living things. Okay, the cosmetics industry for us is a success story. Why? Because there are now alternatives to the use of animals to test cosmetics. The reason that there is progress in cosmetics is because it's something that the public can understand. Okay, it's very important to have public opinion on our side. Now, the public agree that it's not right to kill an animal so we can put cream on our face. Okay, the public can understand that. A 10-year-old child can understand that. So with cosmetics, we have won the argument. It's a very important fight. It took us 30 years because this fight began in 1980 in the New York Times with a full-page advert. How many rabbits does Revlon blind for beauty's sake? Okay, that was a paid advert in the New York Times 30 years ago. It's taken us 30 years to achieve this, but it's a huge victory. Now, Botox is a very interesting example because Botox has both cosmetic and medical uses. But it's because it has a cosmetic use that we could find a replacement to the use of mice to test Botox. Okay, so there's an organization in the United States called the Humane Society of the United States, and they campaigned for 10 years against the manufacturer of Botox in the United States, called Allergan. And 10 years of intensive campaigning persuaded Allergan to come up with a non-animal testing method. Now, you must understand that Botox is botulinum toxin. Botulinum toxin is the most toxic substance known to science. There's nothing more toxic than botulinum toxic. And all the researchers and all the scientific community said, it's too dangerous to replace mice. You cannot replace mice. We will always use mice. And yet, 10 years of campaigning by the Humane Society of the United States persuaded the manufacturer to develop a completely non-animal cell-based method. So if we can replace the use of mice for the most toxic substance in the world, how much easier is it to replace the use of animals for pharmaceutical industry testing? Okay? Much easier. So the problem is not the science or the technology. The problem is public opinion. Now, the pharmaceutical industry is more difficult to deal with than the cosmetics industry because you cannot choose between a drug that was tested on animals and a drug that was not tested on animals. All drugs have been tested on animals by law. By law, before a manufacturer can put a drug on the market, it has to be tested on two species, at least two species, a rodent and a non-rodent species. Okay, but how scientific is that? I mean, that is based on a 65-year-old law. Okay, the requirement to test on animals is based on the Nuremberg Code after the Second World War, 65-year-old law. The science has moved forward by 65 years since then, but we have the same law today, so we have to change the law. Okay, now, I'm a Tierarzt, and if you bring me your pet rat or mouse, I'm quite comfortable to give it penicillin. But if you bring me your pet hamster or guinea pig, I will never give it penicillin, because penicillin will kill the hamster or the guinea pig. So I have shown you here that penicillin can save lives or that penicillin can kill, depending which pocket you pay me. Okay, if you pay me in this pocket, I'll prove that. You pay me in this pocket, I'll prove that. Okay, so let's not forget that these 4 animal species belong to the same family. They are all rodents. Knaagdieren? Yeah. So they all belong to the same family. And yet I've proven to you that penicillin kills or penicillin saves lives. The industry knows this. The industry can pick and choose which species it wants to prove that something is safe or not safe. Now, for every 100 drugs that passes animal testing, 92% will fail to pass through clinical trials. So that's an 8% success rate. If we got 8% in our examinations, we would all still be in school. So 8% success rate is not good. It's not acceptable. Okay, it's worse than just, flipping a coin. If you flip a coin, you have a 50% chance of success. Here you have an 8% chance of success. Doesn't make sense. So as I said, part of the problem with the pharmaceutical industry is that we are using 65-year-old laws that oblige the pharmaceutical industry to use animal tests. They can use non-animal tests if they want to, but then they have to validate. They have to prove that their non-animal method is as good as the animal tests or better. Validation is a process that can take 10, 12 years. No pharmaceutical industry wants to wait 10, 12 years. For every day that you delay your product getting onto the market, you lose €1 million every day. So they're not going to wait 10 years. Part of the problem is that the institution that validates non-animal test methods, Tierversuche, is an organization called ECVAM, the European Center for the Validation of Alternative Methods. They are underfunded. They get €15 million a year from the European Commission. It may sound like a lot of money to us, but it's very, very little. And they do not have enough people working. They do not have enough staff. So what you have is a bottleneck, is a queue of fantastic non-animal methods waiting to be validated. But they have to wait in line. And if you have a non-animal method today that has to wait 10 years, in 10 years' time, that method is out of date, because technology is advancing so fast that method is already out of date. So that the current system of validation is kaput. Okay, we have to find something better. Okay, now it's true that animals resemble people. It is true. Okay, but you have to be careful of the word similar. Okay, similar is not a very scientific word. Okay, so how scientific is the word similar when we consider the fact that we share 50% of our DNA with a banana? Not very scientific. Okay, the animal that most closely resembles people is the chimpanzee. And we share about 98% of our DNA with a chimpanzee. But that tiny difference of 2% means that chimpanzees do not get AIDS, they do not get hepatitis B, and they do not get malaria. And they get different cancers to us. So if that's the best animal model we have, what does that say about dogs, cats, rats? Terrible. Okay, so we share about the same number of genes with a mouse. It's about 23,000 genes. Okay, we share the same number of genes with a mouse. So if you give me 23,000 genes, I can build you a mouse, or I can build you this young lady. But it's not about the number of genes that we have. It's what those genes do. So we have the genes for a tail, but in people, that gene is switched off. In monkeys, rats, dogs, cats, that gene is switched on. So it's not the number of genes that we share, it's what those genes do. So good science is based on 3 principles. Firstly, your research must be species specific. So if you want to study parrots, don't study horses. Okay? If you want to study humans, study human cells, human cell culture, und so weiter, und so weiter. So it must be species specific. That's obvious. Okay, second point, it must do no harm. So you cannot take healthy people or healthy animals, make them sick deliberately, and then try and make them better. That's against basic principles. And the third point is that your research must be evidence-based. Not your opinion, but it must be evidence-based. And animal testing fails on all 3. It's not species specific because you're studying a rat or a dog to study human health. So it's not species specific. It causes harm. You're deliberately making an animal sick. A healthy animal, you're making it sick deliberately. And the third point, it's not evidence-based. There was an article in the British Medical Journal in June of this year, 2014, that says how productive and how predictive is animal experimentation. So you can see even today, within the scientific community, they are starting to ask serious questions. The scientific community cannot remain stumm anymore. They cannot. It's too much. There's too much evidence. There are too many people getting injured by adverse drug reactions, side effects of drugs, to keep quiet. Okay? In addition to the animal suffering, of course, but it's also human suffering. So, species specific. If you want to study humans, there's lots of ways of studying humans without hurting people. Okay? And it's not yet 100% predictive, but it's far better than animal testing. It's more reliable, it's more relevant than animal testing. And it's getting better all the time. And the more money we take away from animals and invest in this, the better this will get. So that's the way to go. So it's not about your dog or your child, it's about good science or bad science. Okay, because of animal testing, you and I have about 300 industrial chemicals in our bodies that shouldn't be there. These industrial chemicals were all tested on animals. The chemical industry can choose which strain of rat or mouse to prove that their chemical is okay. I don't know of any other industry where the industry can do this, has got so much freedom to do this sort of thing. And as a result, we have about 300 industrial chemicals in our bodies that shouldn't be there. Some of these chemicals cause cancer. Some of these chemicals are endocrine disrupting chemicals like bisphenol A, which causes diabetes, which causes infertility, which causes cancer. And that is because of animal testing. Now the good news is that 90% of the chemicals in cosmetics are industrial chemicals. 90% of the chemicals in your cosmetics are industrial chemicals. They're not natural products, they're industrial chemicals. So if we can force, if we can oblige the chemicals industry to use the same alternatives as the cosmetics industry, we can replace virtually all animal testing in the chemicals industry. Okay? Because we have a directive in the European Union that says you must replace animal testing with non-animal tests for cosmetics. But if cosmetics contain 90% industrial chemicals, then surely we can use the same alternatives in the chemicals industry. And the chemicals industry don't want that to happen, but we have to make it happen. So that is a possibility, that is a strategy for a breakthrough in the chemicals industry. Now, there are a lot of very modern toxicological methods using, for example, cell culture to replace animal testing. And one of those modern technologies is called toxicogenomics. Toxico from the word toxicology, and genomics, genes. And you can get a response from your cells, your cell culture, in 24 to 48 hours. Okay, the normal laboratory test to test chemicals in rats takes 3 years. It's called the rodent lifetime bioassay. It takes 3 years before you get a result. With toxicogenomics, you get a result in 24 to 48 hours. Okay? The cells multiply every 16 hours. So you can already see after 16 hours what is the effect on the next generation of cells, the daughter cells. You don't have to reproduce animals and wait 3 years and 6 years. And the genes in the cell will tell you what that chemical is doing to the cell. Because there are families of genes that protect the cell against cancer. There are families of genes that protect the cell against neurodegenerative disease, like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's. So the cell will tell you, you look at the genes that the cell is activating, that the cell is switching on or switching off. And you will see you will get an idea of what this chemical is doing to the cell. No animal testing. So this European chemicals program called REACH is far too slow. Because people are getting sick and dying while REACH, which began in 2007 and finishes in 2007 and finishes in 2018. We can't wait that long. Okay, we already have 300 industrial chemicals in our bodies, and babies born today have 300 industrial chemicals in their bodies. So I think it's very important that we learn how to protect ourselves, our bodies, now, and not wait for the government to tell us what to do in 20 years' time. So these are 5 foods that fight cancer. Okay? You all recognize this one here? Yeah, kurkum, yeah. So that's nature's way of helping us to prevent cancer. And this is a slide that I show in my school talks, because I do a lot of school talks in England, and I want to teach young people how to reduce their risk of cancer. And this is, you can see you can reduce your risk by about 95% through this. Obesity is fetlei bekleid, 45%. Why is it so high? Because fat cells produce estrogen, and estrogen tells cells to multiply. So that is why obesity is such an important factor in cancer. Of course, smoking is the number one. So I hope that I've shown you tonight that there is a very strong scientific argument against animal experimentation. So I hope I've explained to you that on the science, we've won. We already win on the science. The challenge, the difficult part, is how do you communicate what I've shown you now, okay, in 20 minutes? How do you communicate that to members of the parliament, to politicians, to the general public? Because the media are not very interested in what I've shown you tonight. Okay, it's not very sexy. Okay, it's difficult to get the media interested in this sort of message. Okay, so our biggest problem is how do we communicate a complex message to the masses? Thank goodness we do not have to rely only on the newspaper or the television, because there is social media today like Facebook and Twitter. And you know, if you can start a revolution like the Arab Spring through Facebook and Twitter, I think we can create a health revolution through Facebook and Twitter. We're not dependent on the media. So that summarizes what I've just said. That is, we have to get this message across in as many ways as possible, just using our imagination. You are very lucky in Germany to have Ärzte gegen Tierversuche. There is no other country in Europe that has an organization of 600 doctors against Tierversuche. You're very, very lucky. And you can use this, and you must use it, to persuade politicians, to persuade the general public, to persuade the media. Danke.